I'm going to teach you how to create the perfect garden space. I'm Karen Miller from Homegrown Gardens, and whether you are brand new to gardening or you have some experience, this video is going to give you the right tutorial information to create the most magical space for you to enjoy. So the first thing that you need to consider is, how do you want to utilize your outdoor space? It could be, yes, just simply a garden, or it could be more. You could entertain the idea of including a fire pit area, maybe outdoor dining, maybe a workspace. We'll get into all those details in a moment. So after you take some time to consider how you want to utilize your outdoor space, the thing next to do is to consider your design. And most importantly for me, where does the garden go? AKA your raised beds. So first and foremost, let's break down the top 5 reasons as to why you would benefit from building a raised garden bed. The main reason why you would benefit from building a raised garden bed is the increased functionality. If you've ever gardened before, you know that when everything is on the ground, that means you are on the ground. And over time, that impacts your knees and your back. When you build a raised bed, you can get off the ground, and that's good for your body and also the plants. The plants can be taken vertical in a variety of ways. We can get really creative with that in terms of trellising and arbors. The plants will actually thrive better when they get to vine vertically, as it increases the airflow, so those leaves, they aren't as prone to disease as if they were just stuck on the ground. And lastly, when you take your vines vertical, you are actually increasing the usable space in front of those vines. So you can pop in so many different varieties of plants that do not vine, increasing and maximizing your space. And number 3, rabbit control. If you've gardened before, you know how much of a bummer it is to go out to your space only to find your kale nibbled down to the bits by our creatures that live outside. Here at Homegrown Gardens, we actually build our boxes 2.5 foot tall, which prevents those rabbits from hopping in and eating all of your hard work. Another benefit of keeping those bunnies out is that you no longer need to have that unsightly DIY chicken wire fence around your garden space. I have walked into so many garden spaces before where people do what they have to do. They put in a fence and it's a little unsightly. It's always a nice move to omit that completely, and it beautifies your space. Next up is your soil. When you start to garden in the ground, you have no idea what you're going to be interacting with. You may hit roots, you may hit rocks, you may have clay soil or an unhealthy pH for your plants. So with a raised bed, you can actually control all of those variables. At Homegrown Gardens, we like to put in a blend of organic compost, organic topsoil, and sand for drainage. And last but not least, when you build a raised garden bed, you will have less weeds to manage. They come into garden spaces that are in the ground, want to just crawl in and take over your space, which suffocates your healthy garden plants. In a raised bed, getting it off the ground, that is less likely to happen, and especially when you add in pathway materials, it creates more of a buffer between the outside terrain and your garden. Another key ingredient in how to make your garden the perfect space is structural engineering. Now, what do I mean by that? At Homegrown Gardens, we like to be overly cautious and build these structures as strong as we possibly can. The first thing we do is bury and concrete in the interior 4x4 posts nice and deep, so that no matter what the grade change is, it does not matter. Your boxes will be perfectly level. And depending on your design, if your box length gets a little too long, we also add in support cross beams front and back to prevent bowing of your boards with the freeze-thaw cycles that naturally occurs in our winter months. We add in the cross beam support for all of our lumber boxes and even the steel ones as well. So that is how we build our garden boxes to make it structurally savvy and long-lasting. Another important thing to consider after you design out your raised beds is fire. There are 3 types of fires that you can create in your garden space. Amongst those 3 options, we really break it down into 2. Do you want wood burning or do you want gas? Your first and easiest option, if you want wood burning, would be to bring in a portable fire pit, such as Solo Stove. A lot of my clients have used them in the past, they love them, and it is also smokeless. If you're looking for more of a permanent wood burning option, we can custom build a Core 10 steel fire pit. And then your gas options, we can expand the design, get into different materials, and make it super functional and easy for you, where you just turn on a key and your fire comes up out of nowhere. So figure out for yourself, would you prefer wood or gas? Another customization of when you create your outdoor garden space is dining. As you start to grow all of this healthy produce, you of course want to eat it and enjoy it. So when you think about your outdoor dining space, you want to consider where this dining table is going to live. There are a slew of options for hardscapes or even decomposed granite, a permeable option. You can think about how you want to prepare the food with a tabletop, including a fridge, maybe a grill to grill those good yummy zucchinis on. The options are endless. Finally, let's talk about the material options that you can use to construct your raised garden beds. So I've been doing this for years now, and the best material options that we love to use is 2x6 lumber in either cedar tone, smooth cedar, or rough sawn cedar. You can also use Core-10 steel, a lifelong product, or even stone if you're trying to create some curves in your garden space. So first and foremost, when you think about lumber, not all lumber is the same thickness. We like to use 2x6 material. It's nice and thick compared to a lot of garden boxes out there that are constructed with 1x material or even smaller. The thicker you go, the longer it lasts. You have 3 options with lumber. The first option is smooth cedar. This is raw, it is untreated, it is nice and buffed out, which is really nice if you have little fingers around little kids in the garden space that would be more prone to getting splinters with rough sawn cedar. Rough sawn cedar is the sister to smooth, it just hasn't been smoothed out. Rough sawn offers a bit more texture, a bit more color variance, so it has a more rustic vibe. I love working with this material, but the con would be, again, if you have those little fingers around, you're more prone to getting splinters, something to consider. The third option for lumber that you can choose is cedar tone. It's a nice, beautiful brown product that is pressure treated and also safe for garden spaces. The downside to using this type of lumber, although it is the most cost-effective option up front, is that it can tend to warp down the road. I've been doing this for a couple years now, and I've seen garden spaces, because it's injected with copper that maintains its brown color, a pro. The con is that it'll warp as it tends to dry out over the winter. These 2 options, smooth or rough sawn cedar, has not been injected with anything, therefore it is installed drier and less likely to warp over the years. If you do choose Core-10 steel, although it's the highest price point, it is the most long lasting. So if you know you are creating a space that you will enjoy for years to come, I highly recommend Core-10 steel. And it's also only 1/4 inch thick, meaning you get extra grow space in your garden. Finally, your last option is stone. When you want to create curves in the garden, stone is what you choose. That said, you have to have a lot of real estate as stone is thicker, therefore requiring more space, so you actually have the soil depth. So not only can stone be used as the actual garden box structure, but you can also make little borders as well. A common stone that we love to play with is called Eden's Natural Stone. We can install it as the garden box or also as a border, creating a nice barrier between your landscape and your pathway. Another popular material choice for your borders would be a more natural cobblestone look. It comes in a variety of colors, adding a little more flair to your garden. Another option outside of natural stone is you could use a prefabricated stone, such as Unilock. We've done that in a variety of materials, creating the same impact. So after you decide what materials you're choosing for your raised garden, the next thing to consider is your pathway. That is equally as important. I've walked into so many garden spaces where they focus all their attention on the garden box without taking into consideration how big these plants grow, or you have a wheelbarrow and you want to maneuver through your garden space. I like to keep my pathways at first a minimum of 4 foot wide to accommodate a ton of movement and overgrowth from the boxes. And secondly, you have a fun option to play with. What do you want to use? My favorite material to use is called decomposed granite. Underneath, it has a 2 to 3 inch layer of crushed compacted gravel with 2 inches of decomposed granite, which is sparkly and pretty and beautiful. The contrast between the path and the box with the green plants is aesthetically gorgeous. We have also created just simple mulched paths. The pro about mulch is, yes, it's a bit more cost savvy, but the con is that you have to replace it every couple of years, whereas decomposed granite, you lay it down once and then you just need a little refresher layer every 2 to 3 years. One material I would say to avoid in your garden space is pea gravel. Although it's commonly used in English gardens and it looks charming, from a functional standpoint, it's actually harder to walk on. I've been in some garden spaces, especially if you're wheeling a wheelbarrow, it's really tough and it's gonna make it a little harder for you to push that wheelbarrow. And even when you walk, it's a little shifty underneath your feet, whereas an option like decomposed granite is perfectly compacted, making it a smooth, walkable path. So if you're interested in something a bit more permanent for your pathways, of course, you can take the hardscape option. You can do asymmetrical blue stone or something more modern with a linear look, or you could get into more of a prefabricated look such as Unilock and create a ton of different varieties such as a herringbone pattern from copthorn to a cost-effective Brussels block look. The creative options are endless if you choose to go the hardscape route. Last but not least, But also very important is lighting. When you create a garden space that you truly want to enjoy, lighting allows you to be there more often. When you create a raised garden bed, you actually are creating an opportunity to sneak in pathway lighting. I love popping this in so that you can go out there at night. And not only that, you can also put spotlights on your trellis posts and also hang Edison bulbs above overhead. In any space, it will absolutely elevate your garden to luxury status. It sounds so simple, but it truly does make a really dramatic impact in your garden space. So these are some things to consider when you want to create the perfect garden space for you and your family to enjoy. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, as I truly love creating custom, unique garden spaces. If you found this video helpful, I encourage you to share with all of your garden friends so we can continue to make this world a little bit greener and a little more lovely.